Yes. Hi, Michael. Okay, we can start maybe with a little round of introduction. I can start. I'm Sara Petti. I'm the community manager of Frictionless Data, and I'm really happy to be here, and I'm really looking forward to hear Nikhil's presentation today. Shall I pick someone? Oleg, do you want to go next?
I can go.
Oh, sure.
After you.
Okay,
sure.
Thank you.
Oh, who's going? Is it you, Gabriel? Gabriel.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Gabriel here. I'm from Brazil. It's my second time in this monthly community call. And I'm here to see what you guys are doing so far. I'm a public manager here in Brazil, and my office aims to put more public data sets available. And we've been using Frictionless a lot. Actually, we've sent little suggestions in Frictionless GitHub repo, and we are really excited to participate here in this community because the project is fantastic and it's been helping us a lot. That's why I'm here. We actually use like the project for GitHub Actions for continuous data validation, and it's really good. That's why we are here, and I think that's it. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thanks, Gabriel, for joining. Pick someone else that needs to go after you.
I don't know. What about Oleg? I'm right?
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Thanks, Gabriel. So okay. I'm Oleg Lavrovsky, calling in from Switzerland. I am an open data activist. Have been running the Swiss chapter of Open Knowledge for almost 10 years and involved with a lot of projects and hackathons. You've heard of the CVD project, for example, in terms of urban open data sets, trying to get municipalities and communes to publish their data and involve people in using it for planning decisions. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here as a kind of supporter and user of frictionless data standards in my work as a software engineer. And I pick Michael to go next.
Sure. Hi there. Yeah, so I'm Michael. I am the founder and principal consultant at an analytics company called NimbleLearn. We've been working with frictionless data for quite some time now, since around 2014. And since then, we've kind of shifted from just being enthusiastic to actually adopting it in a lot of our work. We recently published, or rather launched a service called Open Data Blend. If there is time at the end, I might be able to quickly show what that is, but ultimately it has the friction.
Michael, are you still there?
Hello?
Yeah, now we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, fine. Sorry, I just had a call coming in.
Okay.
Okay, so so the Open Data Blend project has frictionless data specs at the heart of it. And like I said, if there's time at the end, I'll just show a very quick tour of that.
Thanks, Michael, and welcome, Augusto. Michael, do you want to pick someone that needs to introduce himself after you?
Sure. Simon?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm in a car park in Norwich. So that's not where I normally work. So I normally work at a research institute in Norwich, and we work on, I guess, plant-based informatics, I guess, here in the UK. And we're big in love with frictionless data. Been using it since last year and think it's the best thing since sliced bread. And it genuinely, yeah, very enthused with how it's literally saved our bacon once last year when we had a computer die on a server. So it's great. So yeah, very happy. Unfortunately on my phone, I can't see anyone else. So I'll pick whoever's next. If anyone wants to like dive in.
Oh, Ayrton just sent us a message. Augusto, you want to go next?
Unfortunately, I can't see anyone else on screen, so it's a bit hard to pick. Someone wearing a hat. I don't know if anyone's wearing a hat, they can go.
Not really. Augusto is wearing a headset, though. Does that count? Ah, Oleg.
Shall I go?
Sure.
Okay. I'm Augusto Herman. I work with open data based in Brazil. And I've been using frictionless data for a few years now. And I participate in not only community calls, but also the issues on GitHub and everything. Not Discord, because I don't agree with the terms of service. But yeah, frictionless data has been very useful to us. We have already fixed many data quality problems that were detected by the validation rules we have put in the table schemas, and things like that. So that's it.
Thanks, Augusto. And you can pick either Nikhil or Lily. I think they're the only one left.
We lost him. I'll go. I'm Lily, and I'm the product manager for Frictionless. And I've probably talked to many of you. Which wanted to shout out for Artin. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but it's nice to have you here. I know we've talked on GitHub before, so welcome. I'm glad that you made it here. And I'll pass it on to Nikhil, who I'm very excited to have everybody get to listen to. I had the pleasure of getting to work with Nikhil earlier in the year and watch him work on this project. So I'm just excited about it. So I can pass it on to Nikhil.
Yeah, hi everyone. I hope I'm audible. So I am a final year student pursuing MSc Economics and BTech Computer Science from India. And I was a tool fund grantee last year, and I worked from July last year to Feb this year with Frictionless, and I was working with a Cambridge-based open source organization called Intermine to integrate the Frictionless framework with their web app, and I'll talk about that shortly. Yeah, excited to be here.
Thanks, Nikhil. Well, I think that we don't need to wait any further, and we can directly dive into Nikhil's presentation.
Yeah, sure. I'll share my screen. Okay, so is my screen visible to everyone?
Yep.
Okay. I'll not view in full screen mode or slideshow mode, since I need to switch tabs in between. So just let me know if anything is not visible or clear. Yeah, so most of us know about Frictionless, but if anybody is relatively new to it, so Frictionless is a set of patterns for describing data. And there are specifications for describing different kinds of data like tabular data, fiscal data, and many more. Now, coming to Intermine. So Intermine is a biological data warehouse, and Intermine's web apps allow users to query biological data. And since Intermine's database and UI follow a table-like structure, we went ahead with using tabular data package. So this, for example, is the Blue Jeans app of Intermine, and these are the list of templates. So these are the Intermine is basically, as I said, a large biological data warehouse. So these are all the list of templates that are available. And so, for example, this template will show us the genes located on a particular chromosome, and we can choose one of the templates, or we can build a query from scratch. And once we build that, we can click on this button to see all the results. And these results are stored in the database and also shown on the UI in table form. That's why we chose tabular data package and tabular data resource for Intermine. Now, how this helps user is, so let's say I am a user of Intermine. So earlier what used to happen was I downloaded this data, and for example, I'm not a biologist and I have little knowledge about it, but even for people who had some knowledge of biology, it was a bit difficult to get what all of these fields and columns means, and basically to understand this data in depth. So it was difficult for biologists and non-biologists. And Intermine users are not just biologists, but also non-biologists, like developers of Intermine, who work on these web apps, and they want to understand the structure of the data and how all of it works. So the data package, the frictionless data package, helps the users by describing all the fields or the columns of the user's query by specifying the name of each field, the type of each field, the class path of each field, and the attribute field or field ontology link and the class ontology link. And I'll get to what all of these different things that I mentioned here mean in a bit. So the data, apart from describing each column, the data package also specifies so this is a table. So what is the primary key or the candidate key for this particular table? And what is the formats of the results file? So the Intermine users can download, so Intermine's user can download the data in different formats like CSV, TSV, FASTA, etc. So the data package also mentions that, and it mentions the timestamp of the query. And so for example, all the timestamp of the query help users to trace back errors. So let's say I downloaded a query result, and along with that the data package, and few months later I notice that there is an error in the data or anything. Then I can see the timestamp of that particular query, and I can go back or I can contact the Intermine support team and tell them the timestamp, so that they can trace back the error and probably resolve it. And so for similar purpose, there is also the name and version of the Intermine. So the version helps users to trace back errors. Okay, so now coming to all of the fields and what they mean. So this is a sample data package. And as I mentioned that for Intermine, we went ahead with tabular data package. And this is the name and the version of the Intermine web app. So the app I was using, was BioTestMine, and I was using its version 31. And then these are just the profile and names. And this is the part to the query. So if at any point of time I want to give the link to that particular query which I used to someone else, I can use this path. And this is the format of the results. So the format of the results file of the query. And after that, we have the fields. So each of the fields, so this fields is an array, and each object of this array describes a particular column. So for example, the first column was primary identifier, and the type of that column was string. So it contains string values. And the class path, so this is getting more into biology, but the class path was protein and then DB identifier. And these are the class ontology and the attribute ontology link. And how these links help is, so the ontology links are the links for formal description of a class or an attribute. So we can just wait a second for this to open. And meanwhile, yeah, so this fields, so each objects of this array describe a particular column. And so after describing all the columns, so for example, this is also a column. So the pages and the type of this column is string, and this is the class path, and this is the attribute ontology link and the class ontology link for that particular column. And the attribute ontology link is null if the link is not available. Yeah, so the ontology links, basically what they mean is, so they describe what a class or an attribute is formally. So for example, we can see the formal description of protein here. And it is a protein is an organic polymer that is composed of one or more linear polymers of amino acids. And yeah, so that is the ontology link. And after the fields array, we have a list of primary or candidate keys. So these are the primary keys. And what primary key means is, so for example, if the primary key of this table is this column, the secondary identifier column, that means that in each row, the secondary identifier cell will have a unique value. So this particular column will have unique value for each row, and these secondary identifiers will not be same for any of the two rows. So we can use the primary identifier to uniquely identify each row or tuple. And at the end of the data package, we have the sources array. And in the sources array, we list the title and the URL of the data sources which the Intermine web app used to fetch this data. So for example, if I export this data package, so I have an option of exporting the data package. So I can either export just the results of this particular query, or I can export the results plus the data package. And if I export the data package, that will help me in understanding the results in a better way. Yeah, just a second. So I'll share my desktop. Yeah, so for example, this is the results file, and this file is the same we were seeing on the UI. So this is the results file. And if we go to the data package.json here, then we can see the particular data package for that particular query. And we can see that just like the same sample data package, it has the fields array, it has the timestamp, it has the format, and the format is CSV because we downloaded the results in the CSV format. And if we had downloaded them in TSV or let's say JSON format, then this would have been JSON or TSV. And so the fields array, so for reference, we can go back here and see that the first column is secondary identifier, the second is symbol, and so on. So yeah, so the first object in this array is secondary identifier, and the type is string. And similarly, the ontology links and all for all the columns. And at the end, we have the list of, so this is a real query. So we have the list of data sources that were used to fetch that particular query. We get the results for that particular query. And so all of these help a user, whether he or she is a researcher or a developer, to understand the data. So if I want to dive deeper, I can go to this particular URL to see the whole data set. And I can go to these links to understand a particular attribute or a class. So the fields are very helpful for developers and users, and I think they are going to help a lot to new users of Intermine. And yeah, so this at the end, I would just like to say that I had a very wonderful time working with the Intermine community and the Frictionless community. And I actually understood a lot about how important data is, and how open data can help research communities improve their research. And yeah, I was very happy with the outcome of it, and I was very lucky to get an opportunity like this. And I would, so if anybody, I don't know, but if anybody here is eligible to be a part of any frictionless opportunity like tool fund or anything, then I would like all of you to apply to that, because it's a really great opportunity and I learned a lot from it. Yeah. And special thanks to Lily for helping a lot in 6 or 7 months, I guess. And I would really like to be a part of this community going ahead as well. And I would like to continue to be a part of it. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Nikhil. That was great to hear. Does anyone have questions for Nikhil? Augusto.
I do. Hi, Nikhil. Thank you for the presentation. It was really interesting. My question is about the fields you are using in the table schema that you showed. I see that you are not using the title and description that are in the frictionless data specs. At least the title, I think you have because that information, because you show that in the user interface. So it's a more readable way to say the name of a column. So that's a suggestion, if you can add the title. I don't know if you have a description, but I find that really useful, especially. Yes, I see that you have also a link to ontologies. Perhaps there are descriptions there in the ontology that you could copy. My question really is about the properties that you're using about the class and attributes on semantic web. I think that's very interesting. That could be useful. I just wanted to ask is that a documented pattern for frictionless, and if not, would you consider to please start a discussion on a pattern to really link the tables and attributes to link data ontologies?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for the suggestions about the name and the description, about the title and the description. So actually, we did consider adding the description in the fields array, and I left it because there was a time constraint, and we already had the ontology links, as you said. So really great suggestions, and I'll look into the title part of it, as you said. And about the second question, please correct me if I'm wrong. Was your question that I know that some of these attributes that I use are not in the official frictionless documentation. So were you asking that, asking me to make a contribution so that these attributes are also available in the official frictionless documentation?
Yes, I haven't really looked into it. I've briefly take a look at the specification. There's a part of the specification we call patterns, which are not really part of the specification, but they are patterns that people use in publishing frictionless data that can be repeated, and there can be a discussion on whether or not to incorporate part of it into the main specification. I think that Lily probably can explain that process better, but I just wanted to say that I think it's very useful to link the data to ontologies, and if I do that in a different way than you do, and other people do it another way with another property, then it becomes more difficult to for interoperability to make tools that make use of all of those data sets, because they are not they're not using the same pattern or same standard. So and my question is just that have you looked if there is already a pattern for that, or if not, would you be willing to discuss or propose one? So that's that.
Yeah, so when I was designing the data package for Intermine, I was looking at the available fields in the specifications, and all the fields that were part of the standard data package in the official frictionless documentation, we use that. But for example, we needed ontology links to describe the classes and attributes, and they were not part of it. So we added them because, as Frictionless mentions in its documentation, so the data package are extendable, so we can add our own fields as and when required. But as you said, that a great suggestion that, for example, if you are later planning to add a similar kind of field, then it would make sense to have a standard attribute or a standard name for that particular field. So yeah, I will be happy to work on that. And Lily and I also discussed this briefly during the tool fund. And yeah, so Lily, do you have any suggestions? I will be happy to discuss on Discord if you like, or I will be happy to make a PR, or maybe discuss further on email. So whatever you can, whatever you suggest and suits you better.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point, and we keep hitting on it time and time again. I think that there's a lot of people that would really use some kind of like linked data aspect of Frictionless, or some way to like bring in ontology terms in a way that is more regulated. Can I ask everybody to like put up a hand or emoji or something if you could use some like linked data or, you know, something in your work? I'm just trying to get a sense of who would be interested in that. Okay, definitely several people. Okay, cool. So we haven't really worked on like creating a new profile in a while from like the core Frictionless team standpoint. There have been some community members that have led creating profiles recently. I'm just thinking now, which is why I went quiet. I like this idea. I'm going to put it on our roadmap to talk about with the core team, and then I'm also going to probably bring it up in Discord, or maybe in a GitHub discussion, and like tag some people to have a conversation that way. I mean, you guys know we're a pretty small core team, so we wouldn't be able to do this on our own, and we would really need some help with it. But I think that there are enough people that have asked for it that it'd be interesting. I'm also going to read off Ayrton's comment that's in the chat because it's kind of related as well. Okay, thanks, Nikhil. The Intermine platform looks great. I was particularly interested in the way you were linking the fields to an ontology. I was wondering what specific benefits you or users have seen in linking to an ontology in ways you think more value could be unlocked.
Yes, so there was, so when we were designing the data package, there was, so for each field, it's like very, it's necessary to have a description for that particular field so that new users, or maybe even if I am a biologist, it's not necessary that I have knowledge about all the attributes in, so if in terms of Intermine, so I have knowledge about all the attributes and all the classes. I mean, there is a possibility that I don't know about a particular field, biological term, or a biological class or something. So yeah, description was important to mention in the data package so that users who download the results of a particular query can understand all the fields in a better manner and can understand the classes that they belong to and the attributes. And so the first choice was the description because it was part of the official frictionless documentation. But since at that time, Intermine didn't have descriptions for each of the classes and attributes, since there are I mean, I can't even, so there are countless classes and attributes in the Intermine database. So that's why we decided to go with ontology links. And how the links help, so I think there are some benefits of using the ontology links over descriptions. So first of all, the ontology links are, so for the descriptions, they would take up space in the Intermine database, and they would and the ontology links are external. So we link to an external API. So we use an external API or something for listing the ontology links. And how that helps is we are not responsible for updating the descriptions. If although the description changes like rarely, but we are not really responsible for changing the descriptions. So if the description changes, or if, let's say, the identifier or any formal attribute of that particular class changes, then that is reflected in the link. And in our database, we don't need to change the link. The user will go to that link and will see the updated information there. So yeah, that's a benefit. And other than that, I think as I said, for researchers and developers, the ontology links are really helpful. I mean, I was a mentor with Intermine for Outreachy last year. And at that time, my frictionless project hadn't started. So even I had little knowledge about the Intermine database or Intermine web app. And what happened was when the Outreachy student asked for like any help or any queries about the database or the Intermine, let's say Intermine, so an API and the results of that API, I was not really able to answer that, because even if I like went to the Intermine web app and tried some of the queries, I was not able to understand the structure and the descriptions of those fields. But how these ontology links can help now is that even Outreachy students, let's say, they can go to the web app, and now they can understand the queries in a better manner. And these queries, using the data package, they can understand the API and the database in a better manner. And yeah, so they are helpful, and you responded, so I'm just going to read that comment. So if I'm understanding correctly, we are finding that most users use the ontology similar to an immediate glossary for specific fields that human can read, rather than, say, building automated tools which are programmatically interpreting the data. So yeah, you are right. So ontology links are similar to immediate glossary for specific fields that humans can read. Yeah, so they are that. And each ontology link also has a special identifier, and that identifier is unique to that particular class or attribute, and that is like globally unique. So that's so in all the like databases and research papers, that particular identifier is unique. So yeah, on the ontology links not only help for human readable descriptions, but they also have other information like unique identifiers. Thanks for the great question, everybody. And if anybody has any more questions, I will be happy to take it, because the discussion is engaging, frankly.
Any other questions here?
Yeah, I was wondering, thanks very much for the presentation. And I was wondering if you had, I think it's clear that Intermine is involved in, paper publication efforts. I was wondering if something like a data management plan, where researchers have to outline at the beginning or at the end of the project, what kind of technical or ethical concerns there are, whether that's been a use case for the data packages that you're generating, or is that too?
So can you repeat your question? I didn't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, so it's just my experience, like science portals, Zenodo and so on. They're often involved in publishing data, and you're clearly working on the data package, which is a technical solution, right? Whereas a data management plan is more like a written document that describes how the data is expected to be, more at a academic audience, I guess. I was wondering if you had any discussions about how a data package might help the process of creating a data management plan on paper.
No, actually. So Intermine, at this point of time, Intermine has a data management plan or documentation. We started with data package last year, and we were hoping that will reduce the gap a little bit, and hopefully the Intermine team, or maybe, so this was an idea by the Intermine team, and hopefully they will be working on similar ideas very soon, and they will come up with something like that. But yeah, I will make sure to drop your suggestion to the team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Nikhil? Yes, Augusto, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question. Nikhil, do you think that the data validation features of Frictionless would be useful in your context?
Yeah, so again, a really great question, because all of these questions were discussed by me and the Intermine team and the Frictionless team when we were working on the project. So the data validation part, we did look into it and integrating maybe one of the tools that Frictionless offers with the Intermine web app, or maybe a CLI tool or anything. We did look into that, but at that particular time, Intermine's data was not structured in a manner that will make its integration easy with the data validation tool. So for example, the data validation tool, so the Intermine fields, or basically the Intermine columns, don't have any constraints. So they have a basic data type. So for example, the data type may be string or integer, but the data type for most of the fields is string, even though the data type should be different. So for example, the data type, I'm not really, yeah. So for example, let's say the data type for a particular field should be int, but for like generalization purposes and for easy development, the data type for that particular field is still string, and there are no constraints on either of the fields or columns. So that's why the data, if we integrate the one of Frictionless data validation tools with Intermine, it's not going to help us because as I mentioned, there are no constraints and and the data types are not clearly mentioned. And this, I also brought this up with the Intermine team, and they are working slowly to revamp their web app. So they just launched this new web app that we had a look at, and they are working on like adding descriptions for each of the attributes, and adding more stricter data types and constraints for the fields. So at this point of time, there is no scope for data validation, but hopefully soon in future. I hope I understood your question correctly and answered it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks.
I think Simon asked a question. So by data management plans, do you mean standard reports derived from the frictionless data in a common template or format? So at this point of time, maybe anybody else is welcome to add more. But at this point of time, Intermine only has the data package as formal description of its attributes, and that data package is only available when the user is exporting a query. And apart from the data package, Intermine has no official documentation or description about its databases or data, or the classes or attributes that exist in the Intermine's database. And it's not integrated with frictionless data or any of its templates. Yeah, so the Intermine team is making it more formal and making the data more standard, and the frictionless data package was the first step in that. And hopefully, yeah, there will be more standard practices soon. I hope that answers your question, Simon.
Okay, maybe we have time for a very last question, if you want. Anyone has anything else to comment? Okay, well, in that case, thanks again, Nikhil, for this very interesting presentation. It was great to hear that and to see that. Maybe we can just go quickly through some announcements that we have. So some of you may already know this, but we have 2 new tools that have been developed later in Frictionless. So one is Frictionless Repository, which is a GitHub action for continuous data validation. And the other one is LiveMark, which is a static page generator with built-in tables and chart support, which is also, yes, Lily added a link in the chat if you want to have a look. Okay, Augusto, if you need to go. That's fine. Thanks very much for joining. See you next month.
Thank you.
And yes, and LiveMark. So all of the links are also in the agenda doc. So if you want to go and have a look, give us a comment, some feedback. Obviously, that's always welcome. Also, would love to hear if you used any of the tools or if you're planning to. Just let us know. We can have a chat about it in Discord, or in case you see something going wrong, you can always open an issue in GitHub. And then the other thing that maybe we wanted to talk about, I hope that Peter was here, but he's not, is the fact that we may start a frictionless data community on Zenodo, but I think that Lily can probably tell you more about this.
Sure. So Peter had this idea, which is to, maybe I'll back up. Zenodo is a repository where you can put things such as data sets. And so Peter's company has been putting data sets onto Zenodo so anyone can access them. And he was interested in seeing if we could create a frictionless community on Zenodo. So anybody that has frictionless data sets could publish them in that community, and it could be one central area where anyone could go find data sets that conform to our specs. There's a lot of positives for this, anyone can find the data, we can find the data and see what people are doing. We have all of these great examples. It's really great for open science, open data. But there are also negatives. Zenodo only lets one person manage a community, and I don't really like the idea of that. I would much prefer to have a more community managed resource. So then we started talking about maybe putting data sets on Dryad instead, and Dryad is another repository, and Zenodo and Dryad actually collaborate together, so it could make a lot of sense. But Peter brought up that Dryad has a fee for each data set, so that's not ideal. So anyway, if people have thoughts about this, I would love to hear it. I think our current plan is that we will suggest that people use a tag for their data sets wherever they are, and use a tag that is frictionless data, all one word. But yeah, if you have thoughts, please post them in the Discord. Yeah, in the Discord channel called Data Sets. That's where we're talking about it.
Yeah, thanks, Lily. And then maybe the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that the next community call is going to be on July the 29th. And we're going to hear from Libraries Hacked, which have developed some sort of like library open data schemas. So you will know everything about it next month. Also, I wanted to bring up the fact that if you want to present one of your projects, please drop us a line. We are actively always looking for people that would like to give a presentation or talk about their projects during the community call. So I think that once again, in the community doc, there is a link that you can use to, wait, I'll paste it here, that you can use to, submit your application to, well, to sort of like to speak in the community call. I think we have another extra 5 minutes. And Michael, I know that you wanted maybe to speak a bit about your project. Would you like to do it now?
Yeah, sure. It's going to be like an elevator pitch. I'm going to try and condense a lot of information in 5 minutes, but let's see how it goes. So I can't share my screen at the moment.
Wait, I'll make you, yes. Okay, now you should be able to do it.
Okay, so let me make sure I'm sharing the right screen and then we can get underway. So like I said, this is going to be very quick. So please do slow me down if I start talking too fast. So, I mean, I'll probably do a longer version of this at some point via the method that Sarah just mentioned. But Open Data Blend is effectively a project that kind of, the idea behind it started several years ago, probably not too long after we discovered frictionless data and we're actually dabbling in the open data space. And the general idea is to take large and complex UK open data sets and process them using our domain expertise and our knowledge around, you know, consulting and producing analytic solutions, processing them to create data or versions of the data that are significantly easier to use. They're easier to use due to the fact that the data is remodeled to be optimized for analytical workloads. So if you work with tools like Power BI and Tableau, or any kind of tool where you end up creating like reports and dashboards, normally these tools work best with models that adhere to like star schemas or dimensional modeling, where you have concepts like fact tables, which have your facts or measurable facts about some kind of event, and then has the dimension tables that surround it that are kind of containing descriptive information like the date, who purchased something, where was it, and those kind of descriptive attributes. So we effectively take open data, refine it, model it, and then basically republish it, keeping it open, because I know it's a common practice for vendors and, you know, data aggregators to take the data and then close it up so no one can really benefit from the work. So one of the fundamental or core beliefs behind this project is to keep the data open. So we monetize the service, because obviously there's a lot of costs you know, involved in doing this. So we monetize the service through its value-added services, as well as there's a point at which you need a subscription to download past a certain amount of data, you know, certain number of files, sorry. So I'll quickly go through it. You have effectively a data catalog, which if I click get open data, it takes me here to the data catalog. Now, because of the nature of these data sets, this isn't a high volume, you know, let's get all of the data sets in the UK kind of exercise. This is a very carefully selected set of data sets that fit this whole profile of being large and complex. So one of the largest open data sets in the UK, and one of, I wouldn't say it's too complex in terms of the fact you get the file and you can do stuff with it, but complex in terms of, you know, the different categories of data is English prescribing. To give an indication of how large it is, an uncompressed file for 1 month is about 6 gigs of data. So if you're trying to analyze a year's worth of data, I mean, well, you can do the math, but it's a lot, right? So if I go here into this data set, it gives you some information. And one thing that I'll highlight, actually, let me just go back one. This screen, this UI is all driven by data packages. So once you come onto the data sets page and then go into an actual data set, it's all driven by data package metadata. So we've taken the, I think it was a catalog pattern, and then we've kind of expanded it and added some additional attributes. And I'll show you the metadata behind this package in a moment, just so you can see. But as we go down the page, we can see information about how the data can be used. There's a nice screenshot showing one of the many tools, but this is one of the more popular ones, Power BI, showing an example of how that data would look in a report if you were to build it. This is a data as a service, so we're not actually providing reports at the current time. It's purely data and services around making that data easier to use. But this gives an idea of how this kind of data can be used, and it gives you an idea of volume. So I mean, even aggregating about 1 year of data, you're looking at around 200 million rows. And as you go down, you can see the various dimensions, if you will. So there's a date dimension, and you've got metadata about that. And if I want to preview what that data looks like, I can click preview, and in here you've front and center got licensing information to let you know that's up front, as well as actually having it here as well. There's no ambiguity about whether or not the data is open. And as you scroll across, you'll see the various attributes and the values that are contained within them. So this is like a sample of about 10 or 20 rows, just to give you an idea of the actual contents of it. So in the case of this date table, it's got various columns that would allow you to join to your own table. For example, say if you had a table with activity by day, and then it enriches that by giving you all of these different levels of roll-ups. So once you've joined it in, you could roll up your data to a week level, or to a quarter level, or to a year level. That's to give an idea. Right, so I'll continue down. So here you've got another data file or dimension. And if I preview that, once again, I can see the different contents, the different attributes, the different values in here. So here you'll see different chemicals. And the term chemical is used quite broadly. So chemicals can apply to actual drugs, prescription drugs, as well as things like dressings for wounds and injuries and that kind of stuff. And further down, once again, I mean, you've got all of the columns in the table, what their positions are, the data types are. You can see that this is effectively just the schema information. What drives this is the table schema from the specs. And what you can also see, things like this row count, basically everything you can see on this page is all driven by metadata in the data packages. And if we get down to the actual fact tables, and remember before I mentioned that the fact tables are the measurable pieces of information about an event. So things like how much, counts, averages, that kind of thing, those kind of columns, you can see that among the list of columns, we've got things like prescribing quantity, the number of items, the total number of items, and things like the net costs. And if I preview that, you'll see that this has just got all of those columns with the values that you would typically do some kind of aggregation on. And you can also see that, I mean, this is a partial year, so we're still in 2021, right? So, I mean, I think right now this has about 3 months worth of data. Each month as the data is updated, we will be updating this data set in line with when it becomes available. So that number will be ticking up each month until we reach a year, at which point you'll have all of the rows for that year. But you can see for a previous year, you're dealing with about 200 million rows for 1 year. And to give an indication of total volume across all of the years for which there is data, we're talking about over 1.5 billion rows of data. One thing I haven't actually shown yet is the fact that when you go to download the data, you actually have it available not only in CSV files, i.e. compressed CSV files, but you also have it available in ORC, Apache ORC format, as well as Apache Parquet. So those of you who are familiar with working with data, either in a data engineering or data analyst capacity, know that the ORC and the Parquet formats are very optimal for querying in tools like R, well, using languages like R and Python. And if you're in the world of big data and cloud analytics, a lot of those services allow you to actually directly query these files, which means once you land it into your data lake, you can start querying it immediately without having to further process it. And that's one of the major value propositions. I think I did say that I was going to show you what the metadata looks like, and I'm conscious of the time, so I'm looking at the time. If I go to get metadata, all you're going to see is the JSON, the data package.json. So as I said, every single attribute that you see on the page, things like the row counts, all of the descriptions, where the files are, all of that is available in the metadata. In fact, when you go to the metadata, you'll actually see properties that we don't surface in the UI yet. So I think that's it. We do have another service as well, but that's kind of moving away from frictionless data. I thought I'd focus on the frictionless data service in particular.
Thanks, Michael. I'm a bit, I want to be mindful of time, and I know that we're running out of time, so I just wanted to thank you once again. If you have questions, you can either ask them to Michael in Discord, or I think that probably Michael will present later in the year this project with a bit more time. I want to thank you all once again for coming to this call. Just to highlight that we have done some work on the website, so go and have a look and tell us what you think. And if you can spot something that is not working or that you don't like, please let us know as usual. Once again, thank you very much. I will just let you go because we're 1 minute past the hours, and I'll see you next month.
Bye, chaps.
Bye all. Thanks very much.
See ya. Bye.
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 Thank you for great. Cheers.
Bye.